Victor Lang placed the purchase agreement against the memorial photograph of Rose Bennett as though the dead woman were simply another object that needed to be removed from the store. In front of the business owners along Mercer Row, he gave Lily until 5 o'clock that afternoon to sign. But when Victor used the memory of her mother as a weapon, he did not realize that he had just drawn the most powerful person connected to the project back toward the door Rose had once opened. The rain followed Lily into Bennett's Blooms when she returned from delivering free flowers to the hospital unit for uninsured patients. Water dripped from her old coat onto the floor. Victor stood beside the counter, his dry suit contrasting with the buckets of flowers and the leaking awning. "Every other store has agreed to sell," he said. "This offer will be withdrawn if you continue delaying." Lily removed the contract from her mother's photograph. "I want to see an independent valuation." Victor handed her a file marked TV1. Every comparable property in the report was located in a declining industrial district, but he pointed only to the outdated electrical system and the overdue loan. "After repair costs are deducted, the building is almost worthless." "Then why do you need it so badly?" Victor looked toward the people standing outside the door. "Your mother left behind a store, not a cathedral. Memories cannot repay the bank." His words seemed to silence the entire street. Lily tightened her grip on the picture frame, but she did not sign. "If everyone has truly agreed, you do not need fear to persuade me." Victor put away his pen. 5 o'clock. After he left, the supplier called and demanded payment for the latest flower shipment. Lily's card was declined twice. She looked at the nearly empty account, then at the small bouquet of daisies she had promised to an elderly patient. She placed the flowers aside, wrote the recipient's name on a note, and kept her promise, even though those daisies could have earned her several dollars. The computer suddenly announced a prepaid order from a nationwide flower service. 24 premium yellow roses were to be delivered that day to Rose Bennett. Lily read her mother's name again. Rose had been dead for 18 months, but perhaps an old customer still did not know. The delivery address on the order was Hart Manor, outside downtown Savannah. The software appeared to have printed the purchaser's billing address instead of the former delivery location on Mercer Row. The intermediary system concealed the telephone number. The delivery employee had already gone home, and little more than 1 hour remained. Lily wrapped the flowers herself, placed the unopened card inside an envelope, and drove her aging delivery vehicle through the rain. Hart Manor stood behind a line of ancient oak trees. The estate was so large that Bennett's Blooms could have fit inside one of its wings. The gate attendant examined Lily's simple dress, wet shoes, and peeling vehicle. "If you are looking for work or selling something, use the delivery entrance in the back." "I am delivering a prepaid order for Rose Bennett." "No one by that name lives here." He began closing the gate. A man's voice came through the communication system. "Open the gate." Julian Hart had recently returned to Savannah after many years away. From his study window, he had seen the woman standing in the rain, holding the yellow roses as though she were protecting something fragile. He did not send the house manager. He walked down the front steps himself. "I am Julian Hart. I believe you may have the wrong address." The system may have printed the billing address instead of the delivery address. Lily handed him the order form. "The recipient is Rose Bennett." The cold expression disappeared from Julian's face. He looked at the flowers, then read Rose's name again. "May I see the card?" Lily gave him the sealed envelope. She could have opened it to search for the correct address, but seeing her mother's name did not give her the right to read someone else's private words. Julian opened the envelope. The signature at the bottom of the card belonged to him. The flowers had been delivered back to the person who ordered them. He read aloud, his voice becoming quieter. To Rose Bennett, you once gave a frightened boy a coat, a meal, and a path toward a new beginning. I promised that I would find you. Lily looked at him, trying to connect the man standing inside the mansion with the frightened boy described in the message. You knew my mother? Julian hesitated. The small scar above his eyebrow became more visible beneath the porch light. Who are you to her? I am her daughter. Rose died 18 months ago. The 24 yellow roses trembled slightly in Julian's hands. He had rebuilt his family's estate, created a business empire, and searched for Rose through several old addresses. But he had still arrived too late. I did not know, he said. I truly did not know. Lily did not understand why a millionaire was grieving at the sound of her mother's name. She knew only that the bank was still waiting. Victor would return at 5 o'clock, and Bennett's blooms might no longer belong to her by the end of the day. I am sorry, but I need to leave. As she turned away, the purchase agreement slipped from her coat pocket and fell onto the stone floor. Julian bent down and picked it up. His eyes stopped on the address, 214 Mercer Row, Victor Lang's signature, and the small symbol of Hart Urban Partners, the company Julian himself had founded. Beneath the buyer's name was Magnolia Renewal Limited Liability Company, a subsidiary being used for the neighborhood redevelopment project. Wait! Julian held the paper but did not move closer. How long has Victor Lang been pressuring you to sell this store? Lily pulled the contract from his hand and pressed it against her chest. The grief on Julian's face did not erase the company symbol beneath Victor's signature. Why should I trust the man who owns the company trying to take it away from me? Julian did not try to stop Lily from leaving. He placed the agreement on the table near the door and stepped back. You do not have to trust me, but please give me a few minutes to prove that I knew your mother before this project ever existed. He led her into the study and opened a glass cabinet. Inside was a worn blue wool coat so small that it could never have belonged to the man standing before her. Beside it were part of a bus ticket from Savannah to Atlanta, dated September 14th, 2001, and a receipt for a meal. On the back of the receipt was handwriting Lily immediately recognized. When you are able, open a door for someone else. Rose. Lily touched the sleeve. The leaf-shaped stitching was identical to the way her mother had once repaired her clothes. Julian explained that Rose had found him at 17, sheltering beneath the store awning during a rainy night. She fed him, contacted his aunt in Atlanta, purchased a bus ticket, and placed $20 inside his coat pocket. Without her, I might have continued living on the streets. He offered to pay every debt owed by Bennett's blooms. Lily removed her hand from the coat. If my mother helped you, she did not do it, so a millionaire could rescue her daughter one day. She did it because you needed someone to treat you with kindness. Your check will not repair what is happening to my neighbors. Julian looked at the objects he had preserved for 25 years. For the first time, he understood that repaying Rose did not mean saving Lily alone. He called Eleanor Price, the company's chief legal officer. Stop every property acquisition on Mercer Row for 72 hours. No one is to contact an owner privately. Send every valuation file to Eleanor for review. Victor objected over the telephone. You are allowing personal emotion to threaten a project worth tens of millions of dollars. That is an order, Victor agreed. But immediately after the call, he instructed Magnolia Renewal to continue sending letters carrying the old deadlines, claiming they had been prepared before the suspension. When Lily returned to Mercer Row, Evelyn Parker was waiting inside the flower shop with a metal box. Rose had given it to her before entering the hospital. Inside were a journal, a copy of the bus ticket, and a pressed yellow rose. Lily had avoided the journal for 18 months because she feared reliving her mother's final days. This time, she opened it to the marked page. Rose had written about Jules, a boy with a small scar above his eyebrow, who insisted that he would repay her. "I told him not to repay me. Repay the next person standing in the rain." Evelyn confirmed that she had helped Rose contact the aunt in Atlanta. The coat, ticket, and Evelyn's account convinced Lily that Julian had told the truth about the past. But none of it proved that he was innocent of the plan threatening the entire neighborhood. Lily and Evelyn questioned the store owners one by one. The bookseller had received one price, while the pharmacy owner had received another. But Victor had told every person that they were the final owner who had not agreed to sell. Some letters also demanded that the sale prices remain confidential. Fear quickly became suspicion among neighbors. That afternoon, Julian arrived at Bennett's Blooms wearing a simple shirt. When he noticed water leaking through the awning, he held the ladder and tarp, while Lily secured the damaged area instead of calling an employee to handle it. Through the photographs on the walls, he learned that the shop offered free flower arranging classes for widows, donated flowers to patients who could not afford them, and employed homeless teenagers by the hour. "You are doing what your mother once did," he said. "I am only trying to keep the door open." The silence between them had just begun to feel warm when Victor entered. He placed a new offer on the counter. It was 30% higher than the original amount. "Sign now, keep the price confidential, and stop gathering information for your neighbors. You protect your own future and the project continues." Lily did not touch the pen. "Withdraw the pressure letters and provide everyone with the same public valuation. I do not negotiate for the entire neighborhood." "Then I will not save my store by helping you take theirs." Victor removed the agreement. It was another opportunity to correct his actions, but he chose to proceed with the community meeting the following morning. Before the store owners, Victor displayed the TV1 report and announced that the company had already approved the project. "Almost all of Mercer Row has agreed. Only Lily Bennett is using her personal relationship with Julian Hart to demand a higher price." Whispers spread through the room. People who had once stood beside Lily began asking one another who had secretly agreed to sell. At that moment, Julian entered and ordered the meeting stopped. Victor calmly handed him a report containing signed statements that every negotiation had been voluntary. Beneath the overall project plan was Julian's electronic signature. Lily looked at that signature, then removed the flower card from her pocket and placed it in his hand. "You may keep the thank you message. I need the truth." Julian did not stop her from leaving. That evening, Eleanor examined the company server. A file marked TV2 had been deleted from the main records but remained inside a backup. The valuation showed that Mercer Row was worth almost 40% more than the amount presented to the owners. Attached to it was an email from Victor. "Do not include the historic property valuation in the files given to owners." Julian looked at his approval signature beneath the project plan. "Victor concealed the truth, but I was the person who gave him the authority to do it." The following morning, Julian would have to stand before everyone on Mercer Row and answer one question. Would he protect his project or the people his project was crushing? The following morning, the Savannah Preservation Hall was filled with store owners, residents, council members, and reporters. Victor still had an opportunity to admit that he had hidden the valuation. Instead, he stood before the microphone, described TV2 as a preliminary analysis, and said purchasing properties at lower prices was necessary to protect profits. Lily Bennett has turned this transaction into an emotional story, Victor said. She is using the connection between her mother and Mr. Hart to demand special treatment. Lily did not ask the council to protect only Bennett's blooms. Stop every purchase offer until all property owners receive the same information and have access to independent legal counsel. If my store is saved because my neighbors were deceived, that is not justice. Julian brought the blue wool coat with him. He publicly explained that Rose had saved him when he was a homeless teenager and that Lily was her daughter. Then he placed the coat on the evidence table. This memory explains how I knew Rose. It is not legal evidence for determining the value of this neighborhood. I approved the project and its bonus structure without examining how they were being carried out. Victor is responsible for his choices. I am responsible for giving him that authority and benefiting from the system. Evelyn testified about the rainy night in 2001. The journal, bus ticket, meal receipt, and leaf-shaped stitching confirmed the story, without relying only on Julian's or Lily's account. Eleanor placed TV1 and TV2 beside each other and presented the file data, editing history, and preserved emails. TV2 had been created before the purchase offers and valued Mercer Row at almost 40% more. Owners had been told that all their neighbors had already agreed to sell. Letters carrying deadlines had continued to arrive after Julian ordered the suspension. Lily had been offered a higher confidential price in exchange for abandoning the other businesses. Victor's email appeared on the screen. Do not include the historic property valuation in the files provided to owners. There was no evidence that Lily had requested money or attempted to use Julian for personal advantage. Victor argued that the company needed to acquire enough properties to preserve the project and create hundreds of jobs. If every owner delays, the entire city loses an opportunity. Eleanor answered, an expected public benefit does not give you the right to take away a seller's ability to make an informed choice. Julian announced that Hart Urban Partners was withdrawing its rezoning application, canceling every offer based on TV1 and suspending Victor pending an investigation. The City Council stopped the project review and transferred the records to the real estate oversight authorities. No one declared Victor guilty inside the hall, but his bonus was frozen, and the project worth tens of millions of dollars was publicly suspended. Julian did not ask anyone to accept a replacement proposal immediately. Instead, he introduced the Mercer Row Community Preservation Partnership. Store owners could keep their properties or choose long-term lease agreements. Every building would receive valuations from 2 independent organizations. Owners would receive funding for legal advice. Hart would invest in infrastructure while accepting a lower return and would not own the entire neighborhood. A representative chosen by the local businesses would hold a permanent oversight seat. Lily agreed to join the Design Council but refused to become the public face of Hart Urban Partners. Judge the proposal by the rights and interests of the residents, not by the story between Julian and me. The investigation confirmed that Victor had concealed documents, distributed misleading information, and violated the suspension order. He was dismissed, while the proper authorities handled the legal questions. Hart Urban Partners eliminated bonuses based on purchasing properties below fair value. Eleanor became the leader of an independent compliance committee and created a confidential system for reporting unethical pressure. Lily did not accept money from Julian. She applied to the Mercer Row loan program and proved the bakery's revenue, repayment ability, and community value like every other applicant. Her low-interest loan was approved through a public process. She repaired the roof, reopened the greenhouse, and hired 2 teenagers facing difficult circumstances. Julian created the Rose Bennett Open Door Fund to provide bus tickets, temporary housing, job training, and counseling for homeless teenagers. The fund was governed by an independent board, with Lily and Evelyn serving as advisors. A personal debt of gratitude became an open door for people Rose had never met. 6 months later, Bennett's Blooms was busy again. Rose's photograph remained in its original place beside the pressed yellow rose and the words, "Open a door for the next person standing in the rain." Mercer Row had been renovated, but the store owners still controlled their own futures. Evelyn was invited to serve as an honorary representative on the Preservation Council, and she remained the flower shop's first customer every morning. Julian was required to report regularly to the community about costs, progress, and the rights of every property owner. No decision involving Mercer Row could be approved without public records and comments from the local business representative. That was a change a private check written to Lily could never have created in one day. Julian became a regular customer. He always paid the full price and often purchased a small bouquet for the youth center. His relationship with Lily slowly developed through conversations and community work, not pity or obligation. One afternoon, Julian invited her to have coffee. Lily smiled. "I will accept, as long as this is a date between 2 equals, not between a millionaire and someone who owes him gratitude." Before closing the store, Lily placed 24 yellow roses in his hands. Julian assumed they were meant for Rose, but Lily shook her head. "My mother received your gratitude through the way you protected people she never had the opportunity to meet." The flowers had been delivered to the wrong address, but gratitude had finally found the place where it truly belonged. Not inside a mansion or a flower shop, but in the door opened for those who were still standing in the rain.